Yesterday, the final episode of WandaVision debuted. This has been the weirdest, quirkiest, and most experimental project that we've gotten from the MCU. So today I'm going to stop and rank all 9 episodes from the worst to the best. My name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies, TV, and Marvel way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your ranking of all 9 episodes of WandaVision. Because this show is so different and has so much variety inside of it, I suspect we're going to have very different rankings. So keep in mind, my list isn't the right list. It's just my list, and I would love to see yours.
I have spoken.
One more thing before we get started. Over on my Patreon page, I have a companion video to this where I did a 25-minute review of the whole season with my thoughts on everything, my experience watching it, all of that fun stuff. Join at any level and you can unlock that video, and let's get started. In last place is episode 7, Breaking the Fourth Wall. Now you'd think an episode based around the style of Modern Family and The Office would see the family together and Vision at the office. Well, you would think wrong, because that's not what they did.
You serious?
Now, on the surface of all the sitcoms they tried, this was the only one for me that fell flat. For whatever reason, the humor of it didn't land that well for me. And as I mentioned before, the specific plot that they went for, or that they had for this episode, didn't match the shows that they were going for. So there's all this potential of doing a Modern Family type story with their family, but their family was split up. There's all sorts of potential of doing an Office situation, but Vision didn't go to the office, and so it felt like superficially touching on the styles of those sitcoms without doing anything fun with it. This is also the episode where I felt the sitcom gimmick very much competing with the need to move the story forward. It felt like they really wanted to do an episode that touched on this style of television from about 10 years ago, but they didn't have enough plot to make that happen. So on the plot level, basically, you just have Wanda being introspective at the house while Vision is stuck in traffic, and the whole episode exists for the purpose of having the Agatha reveal in the final scene, and that's about it. Nothing else of substance really mattered in anything else that happened, just that final reveal. Now, granted, Agatha all along? It's been Agatha all along. That's a fantastic, fun song, a nice little touch. The episode as a whole, while still watchable, it's entirely watchable episode. It's not like a bad episode, but of them, my least favorite. At number 8 is episode 1, filmed before a studio audience. As it turns out, it's very disorienting when you kick off the new phase of your long-running franchise by taking 2 characters, one of whom is dead, and dropping them into a 1950s sitcom without explaining what's going on.
No way!
It's cleverly written, but intentionally jarring. We are dropped straight into a sitcom with absolutely no context. And as you're watching it, every single line of dialogue has a double meaning. Somehow it ties into what we're feeling as the audience while feeling like it fits in one of these types of episodes from the 1950s. The dialogue can be snappy, and it really does feel like it's plucked right out of the 1950s. And at the same time, when you move into that dinner sequence and the guy starts choking and the wife just starts repeating herself, suddenly it feels like we're in an episode of The Twilight Zone while still inside of this episode of the 1950s sitcom, while at the same time actually being inside of the MCU. It's so weird and out there that it immediately raises a bunch of questions in our minds and raises the intrigue level of the entire show, and it absolutely got us talking. And very difficult to rank in a list like this, because it legitimately is a 1950s sitcom episode in the middle of the MCU. So I love the novelty of it. I don't know how much I personally would choose to just rewatch it in and of itself, but I will say this, my 2-year-old daughter absolutely loves this specific episode and wants to watch it all of the time.
Hey, the baby, who's this? Who's this?
Wanda.
Wanda?
Yeah?
You like Wanda?
Yeah.
Next up, episode 2, Don't Touch That Dial. In a lot of ways, very much a continuation of what they did with the first episode, but cranking everything up a little bit more and funnier than the first episode. The whole magic show sequence, for me, is my favorite of the sitcom bits out of all these episodes.
I like it a lot.
You very much get the chemistry between the two characters, the romance between them, and it's very funny. Along those same lines, it cranks up the intrigue while still not providing any answers, but there's more overt references to the fact that something is very wrong. Of course, you have the radio sequence where a voice starts talking to Wanda, and then the timeline snaps a little bit and we kind of move through things. We get to the end of the episode where they go outside and you see the beekeeper come out of the ground and then snaps back inside to have our big reveal that she's pregnant that leads into the next episode. And so there's so many things in here that kind of just make you kind of go, what on earth is this thing? Ratcheting up the humor while at the same time ratcheting up the Twilight Zone aspects of things that just made for more of what I liked about the first one, but a better version of it. But at the same time, it's a 1960s sitcom and not the thing that I would naturally gravitate to rewatch a lot. Number 6, episode 3, Now in Color. A charming follow-up to the second episode, and where you really see Wanda and Vision as this couple that is excited to start a family. Also, as you go throughout the episode, you start getting all these, or Vision starts to see the problems in this universe, especially as he interacts with the neighbor who's just cutting into the wall. There's all these little creepy moments. Actually reminded me of this short that came out like 5-6 years ago called Too Many Cooks, that was kind of playing on sitcoms itself and then totally bananas and bonkers.
Maybe too many cooks will spoil the broth.
It comes to the future. You can never have too many cooks.
And that's what this felt like to me, of like, we're in a sitcom, but this is very wrong. Something is not right here. And that keeps building up throughout the episode as you realize Wanda's not in as much control as she thinks she is, as she's starting to go into labor, all of it leading to that final segment where the neighbor starts to snap out of it just a little bit. And he's like, we're all. And Agnes doesn't want him to say what it is, but Vision's like, what on earth is this? Meanwhile, Monica was inside with Wanda as she gave birth and kind of getting to know her character a little bit, all leading up to that last little bit where it reveals that she's not supposed to be here. She's from the outside, and Wanda actually snaps out of it, boots her from this whole deal, which kind of gives one of those, whoa, what on earth is going on here? If Wanda's doing that, is Wanda's control of all this? A great mind-blowing conclusion to it that teased what was going on without really giving any answers, and it provided the transition from the sitcom to the actual story of the season. In 5th place is episode 8, Previously On. Now, this was probably the trickiest episode for me to place because on the one hand, there are fantastic elements and sequences inside of this episode, and at the same time, it was an exposition-heavy episode as the next to last episode.
Not a great plan.
Whenever it went into kind of Wanda's past and you learn the tragedy of her life, there is some really meaty emotional sequences in there, especially as she goes and she sees Vision's body on a table and how heartbroken she is over that.
I can't feel you.
Powerful stuff. And I don't want to take away from the fact that those are great sequences, but the episode as a whole felt like them giving us a bunch of exposition where they show us stuff that we as the audience already kind of know, but Agatha doesn't know. She's learning things. Likewise, because the entire first half of this season was about building intrigue and raising questions in the audience's mind, the answers that they provided at times felt kind of disappointing to me. Some of that is that they teased and implied some things that turned out to not entirely be true. Some of that's even in the interviews that Paul Bettany was giving, and a question that Elizabeth Olsen answered implied bigger things were coming, that's not really where the show was. But more importantly, by bringing in Evan Peters as Quicksilver, they used the audience's knowledge of the actual real world in the Fox franchise as a red herring because they know we know they're heading towards the multiverse. They've told us they're doing a movie called In the Multiverse of Madness, and Wanda's in it. And then they pulled someone from a different universe, put them into this show, and it didn't end up paying off as anything.
Wow, that was weird.
And inherently, that feels like a bit of a bait and switch rather than a satisfying answer to what's going on. And that's what makes this episode frustrating. The individual moments are actually quite good. It's well done. It's very emotional.
We were on the verge of greatness. We were this close.
But the episode and what it provides for the season as a whole led to some disappointment. So it's a little bit tough to place it exactly. In fourth place is episode 4, We Interrupt This Program. Now this is an exposition episode right when we needed an exposition episode. Episodes 1 through 3 drop us in the middle of a sitcom, provide absolutely no context for what is going on, and then do some Twilight Zone mystery moments to make us go, what on earth is this? And then episode 4, it is an exposition episode, but it provides that context for everything that's happening in a way that made everything more satisfying and meaningful when it happened. It kicks off with this great sequence showing Monica when she returned from the blip and the chaos that ensued when the blip happened and the people returned and the loss that she felt. You kind of get just a flavor of that world, and I love to get little glimpses of things like that. Then we kind of learn a bit about the Sword organization, get a context for those symbols that we're seeing showing up in the first 3 episodes. Eventually she ends up on a mission. Jimmy Woo shows up, and I really enjoyed Randall Park and this character in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and they found a way to make him get to be the hero, because in Ant-Man and the Wasp, he was the foil to our hero. He's meant to be the fool. Here, he's just as quirky, odd, funny. He's not a different person, but he gets to be competent and the guy that's successful. That's just a nice little touch. So it's all exposition, but it was fun exposition, written nicely. It's entertaining and brought kind of the right characters back in the right way. Real quick before I give you my top 3, remember to share your ranking down below in the comment section. My list is not the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. Also remember, I have a companion video to this over on my Patreon page where I did a 25-minute review discussion of the entire season. The link for that is down below in the description. Join at any level and you can unlock it. And next week, I will be doing a ranking of the WandaVision characters, diving into each one of the main cast members, all of my thoughts on them. That is coming next week. In third place is episode 9, the series finale. A satisfying conclusion to our little saga about this family inside of a sitcom that's not real. Wanda has to own up to the fact that her creation of this family has been terrorizing and tormenting an entire city. Oops! At the same time, she has to battle off Agatha and all of her temptations and what she's trying to trick her into doing. Meanwhile, you've got White Vision showing up with Hayworth and his army showing up. Everything kind of is coming to a head all in one episode where you finally get that spectacle that you want inside of an MCU finale. You get some final moments of Vision the philosopher. You get the tragedy that this was always going to be. This was never going to be a happy ending. That was never a potential ending for this story. And so you get the heartbreak and you get some teases of where some of this could go in the future. All of that is exactly what I wanted, but just in general, it provided this finale that I wanted, probably because my expectations were set a little bit better by the previous 2 episodes. I went into this expecting this sort of proper finale, and it didn't try and wimp out on the fact that this reality couldn't continue to exist, and that means Wanda's going to lose her family, and the proper ending happened, and they handled it just delicately enough that it's tragic while not totally ripping your heart right out of your chest. Our runner-up is episode 5 on a very special episode. Now, this section right here in the middle of the season, I think is where they really found their stride.
You did it! Congratulations!
where you had the sitcom elements happening with the family together, and you had the outside stuff happening, fleshing out the story, moving things forward. When both of those were happening, that's when this show was at its best. You get the fun family dynamics of them having a couple of kids that keep getting older. But the big thing that happens, and I'm not referring to that final sequence, is that Vision becomes very aware that this world is not right. And he just keeps looking around and discovering things that don't fit. He walks up to a guy, zonks his brain, and the guy starts talking and freaking out about everything going on. And he goes, this is not right. And he confronts Wanda, and they actually get into a fight, and they're getting mad at each other. And you have the real emotion start to come out as the reality of this lack of reality is put right on display with the two of them yelling at each other. And to get out of the fight, all of a sudden, our recast Pietro shows up at the door. One of the things that I think worked for and against this show was the week-to-week release, because it gave us a week to just think about, speculate, talk about what just happened on that episode. But this was the episode that had the one where you're like, what on earth does this mean for all of this? If this guy is showing up right now in light of what Darcy said earlier, in light of this is what they said about Monica, what is this? But in first place is episode 6, all new Halloween Spooktacular. Much like I said about the last episode, this show for me worked the best when it was combining all the different things it was trying to do. And that's what this episode did, even just a little bit more than episode 5.
Excellent.
You have this fun Malcolm in the Middle Halloween episode plotline going on. At the same time, you kind of advance the stuff on the outside with the competing different groups trying to figure out how to resolve this issue on the inside. And then with Vision kind of looking around the city, you get that Twilight Zone type stuff going on as he goes further and further outside, sees people doing weirder and weirder things. And at the same time, you have Wanda and fake Pietro talking to each other, musing about their childhood as she's being manipulated through everything that's kind of going on in the story. The kids discover that they have powers. It leads to some fun little scenarios. So the plot moved forward. It had the laughs from the sitcom. It raised questions. It kind of answered some questions. It had all the things that I enjoy about this show in one nice little package. So it comes in at number 1. If you enjoyed this video, you can check out the rest of my WandaVision content right over there in that playlist. I will be adding that WandaVision character ranking in just a few days right in that playlist. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and Marvel too much.